What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the first ever episode of Fighting Lines with Brian Ciano. We appreciate you joining us in, whether you're a fan from our former forays, the Combat Sports Report, and Bare Knuckle Fighting Main Event, or whether you're new to this show. To me, as the host, we appreciate you joining us. Always love talking fighting with all of you. Now, what is this show? What is Fighting Lines? Well, we're all about fight sports. We're all about betting lines, so we're combining them here. Fighting Lines with Brian Ciano. Every week, we're going to be talking about the biggest things going on in the world of combat sports. I've been loving this for a long time, ever since my days of training karate as a little kid to watching the big pay-per-view fights of Tyson and others in the 90s and early 2000s, getting into the UFC when Chuck and Tito were throwing haymakers, training myself a little bit, even still got the heavy bag. I'll go out there and throw a few rounds on there because God knows I love that way more than getting involved in some running. But we've always been involved with combat sports. I've loved it. I've enjoyed it. I've studied it. And come to bet it. Come to love doing that over the years as well, make it even more exciting than just getting involved in watching the fight, and throw a little action on it too. And we'll continue to do that here on Fighting Lines with Brian Ciano. Every week, we'll cover the biggest things going on in the world of MMA, talk about the UFC, PFL, some others here and there, the biggest stories, biggest fighters, biggest storylines. We'll get into glove boxing, the sweet science, talk about the biggest things going on there, the biggest fights, and we'll even hit the ungloved scene with BKFC like we've done before, continue talking about some of the underserved areas of combat sports a little bit more as well in the fray. So we'll get all that involved each week on Fighting Lines here with me, Brian Ciano. Today's show, we got a lot going on. It was an action-packed weekend of fights last weekend. Started off with the BKFC 80. We'll talk about that later in the show, the rematch between the two heavyweights, Adams and Perdomo. A rematch we probably didn't really need, but we still got good fights overall for there. Then early on Saturday, we had Noche UFC, of course, in San Antonio, pushed up a little bit to avoid the big pay-per-view boxing card, the fight night there between Lopez and Silva. We'll talk about some of the top fights on the main card there. And, of course, we're going to start off with the biggest fight of the weekend, the one that we saw last, which was the Netflix fight premiere of Zuffa Boxing and TKO with Canelo Alvarez and Bud Crawford. We're going to get all that in show as well as later on. We're going to talk about, some things that I want to get off my chest, some segments I'm calling Line in the Sand and Crossing the Line. Stories that came out over the last month involved with combat sports that just kind of irked me a little bit, and I think it's time that we stand up and say something about those. All that coming up on today's show. All right, let's start off with what was the biggest fight of the weekend, the debut of Zuffa Boxing and TKO, and they did it with a bang on Netflix with Canelo Alvarez versus Bud Crawford out there in Vegas at the Allegiant Center. That's right, out where the Raiders play. They took over the football stadium and made it a boxing arena and brought in a lot of people, over 70,000, almost 70,500 in attendance, and they needed to make that money back because it cost them to even have this fight. Of course, not even talking about the fighter purchase that we'll get into later on. I mean, it cost them $1.75 million just to get the stadium clear because this is the home of UNLV football. God knows why. They certainly do not need that many seats. They don't have that many fans, but they play at Allegiant Stadium. I guess that was one way to get the taxpayers to foot the bill a little bit. And they had a game scheduled for this weekend when they got this fight made. So they said, you know what? This is the weekend we want to have it because it was Mexican Independence Weekend, which is always a big fight weekend in Vegas in general, always has been, was for Mayweather for a long time. He would fight on Cinco de Mayo weekend and Mexican Independence Day weekend. Of course, Canelo Alvarez, being a Mexican fighter, is the same. He loves having it on these September fights right around that time. So they really wanted to have it here. So what they do, they said, here's the cash. Go play some other time. And that is what they did. They moved that game up a couple weeks, and that got them free to hold Allegiant Stadium where they had over 70,000 people in attendance. And this was a huge fight. Two guys who are two of the best in boxing. If you're talking about Mount Rushmores of the decades of the century so far, as many people were leading up to this fight, these are two guys that are probably up there, or at least in the top 5 of what we've seen the last 25 years in boxing. Two guys who are not afraid of challenges, who will fight the best. For some people, I thought it was a little bit more of a challenge and a little bit more important for Bud Crawford. They thought that, although he was unbeaten, although he was a 2-division unified champion, people thought that he somehow needed this fight for his legacy, which I thought was just BS. Sure, it would, of course, be a cherry on top of the sundae, but when you look at his record, a guy who KO'd Gamboa, who had TKO against John Molina Jr., who TKO'd in a row Jeff Horn, Jose Benavidez Jr., and Amir Khan, TKO'd Kell Brook and Sean Porter back-to-back, and then, of course, TK'd Errol Spence Jr. as well. The guy had a lot of great fights on his resume, and a lot of those ended by finishes. It wasn't a guy who was pitter-pattering, trying to get his decisions. he was going in there and finishing guys. Now, you may not think those are the best names, but those are the guys who are in front of him. Those are the guys who are in his weight classes, and he dispensed all of them. And a lot of them have been some great fighters over the last 10, 15 years. So the argument that he needed this fight, I thought was ridiculous, but it didn't matter because he made sure that he was going to have, what he needed done. He was going to come in here and prove that point, and we'll talk about the performance in just a minute, but there was a lot of stuff leading up to this. There was just a weird feeling around the week as well, because of course this was the debut of Zuffa Boxing and TKO with the Saudi-backed money that they have, and they came into this press conference, and it was weird. There was some back and forth. Some people that were really fawning over the Zuffa guys and Dana White. Max Kellerman at the press conference is basically acting like these guys saved boxing before Canelo. Credit to him, stepped in like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Boxing existed before them. It's going to be here long after them. They're not the saviors you guys make them out to be. But then it wasn't all praise. There was a journalist there who pushed Dana White on TKO trying to change the Muhammad Ali Act. That's been a big thing in protecting fighters' rights. It's been even something that has been pushed to, maybe even go to MMA over the last couple of years that has not gone through. But, the way that the UFC has run its business in the MMA world, buying up its competitors, pretty much making it the NFL of MMA, where if you want to be the best, you got to fight here, and we're going to give you the deal that we want. It's going to be our terms, and if you don't like it, too bad. I mean, that's something that is not going to fly in boxing. These fighters are making a ton of money. They're making way more as headliners than you make on any UFC card unless you have a certain name, and like a Conor McGregor or like a John Jones or some of these other fighters, Ronda Rousey, who made a lot of money. These boxers make way more than that, as we'll talk about later on. So to come in here like you're just going to push things around and do what you're going to do, some people in the world of boxing, especially the fighters, kind of bristling at that a little bit, but still, they came in here with, these two huge names. They got them signed. They got them to be the faces of the start of this. It's not going to be always like this. You heard them talk about that at the press conference as well. There's going to be a difference in how things are run, after this, although they still both these guys for a couple more fights, I think, under contract. But it was just a weird feeling, and it led to a weird start to the fight, too. I mean, you come in with the intro video, as you always do for the big fights. They have the footage of them talking about each other, footage of them training, footage of past fights, playing it at the stadium, getting everybody all pumped up. And then they randomly go to the guys from Tool playing in the stadium. And say, okay, maybe they're intro music for someone. No, because then they stopped and went to mariachi band playing the theme for Desperado. And you had Bud Crawford, who of course is not of Mexican descent, walking out with a guitar like Antonio Banderas did in the movie. So it was a little weird situation. I don't know if he was, taking shots at Canelo, kind of messing with him, getting his head on the way, because of course there's going to be a lot of Mexican fans there as well. Some people think it was a shot at Ilia Topuria from the UFC because he's been trying to get at him, and that's the music he walks out to. But I really don't think he was focused on that guy the night he's fighting Canelo Alvarez, one of the best ever in the ring. Then you get to a situation where Canelo comes out to a different mariachi band. I mean, I know you guys are paying a ton for this fight, but maybe we coordinate and have just one mariachi band. I mean, we go from Tool to one mariachi band to another mariachi band. Kind of ridiculous to me. It's weird, kind of drawn out, but I did like some of that entrance. I mean, they had the cool screens that these guys were walking in through, so you can see, the graphics. You see the fights, pictures of them as they're walking through the tunnel to come out to the fight. It was a little bit of a long tunnel. Let's just get to the action. That's where it mattered most. That's what we liked it. Even at one point, Canelo's in the ring, through his walkout, and the sound just cuts out to randomly have some ad pop up on the screen for some cocktail mix. Just no sound. Then it comes back in. Overall, though, I thought, the beginning of it was okay. Netflix was doing its thing. They're trying to make it huge. Okay, I get it. Let's get to the action. We finally do. After, of course, the fans had their say of Michael Buffer talking about Saudi Arabia, the money that they're putting in and being involved, and Turkey al-Sheikh. Fans didn't seem to be too happy about them being a big part of this, but they were still there paying their money for it, so I guess they didn't really care that much. We get into the action. Back and forth in the beginning of the first round, a little bit of feeling out from both these guys. That one could have gone either way. Most of the rest of the fight went Crawford's way. Now, the scores from the judges, they didn't reflect that. And I thought the scoring was terrible. You even had some fighters come out and say this since, that they thought it was terrible scoring as well. To me, when you look at the fight, Crawford, I gave him round one. You throw that one either way. I gave him 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 9, 11, and 12. Canelo, 5, 8, 10. That's right. 9-3 on my card. Maybe 8-4 if you really want to flip that one the other way in round one, because Canelo, had some big punches. He was throwing hard. None of them really landed. it was kind of going off the gloves of Crawford. Crawford didn't throw much either. He had one clean shot that landed, really. A couple other ones here or there. It was a tough one. Could go either way. But to me, scoring was 117-111. I thought Crawford ran away with this. Both guys got more active in the second. You had Crawford moving and countering, landing a few times while Canelo was just trying to throw hard. In the fourth round, Crawford was just cruising. Solid combos. Canelo was getting frustrated. You could see it on his face. He was getting annoyed that he couldn't get his stuff going. Finally, in round 5, Canelo really gets into the action. Came forward, more active, trying to put Crawford on the heels, throwing a lot more, trying to make him uncomfortable, not let him throw his punches. But he doesn't hold on to momentum. Right away, Crawford in round 6, right back, aggressive, landing good straight lefts to snap Canelo's head back. Crawford was smiling the whole round. The guy was just having a great time doing his thing. Had some few body shots by Canelo in 8 that I think swung it for him there. But again, Crawford landed right away in 9, coming back, staying in the pocket. A lot of people coming into this fight thought it would be that Canelo would be the power puncher, stalking, trying to get the finish, and Crawford would have to outbox him, would have to get in there and get out and not get hit in order to win. He didn't care. He showed you people and all of us that he wasn't afraid of him. There were plenty of times he sat in that pocket, and as Canelo's swinging big on him, he's swinging right back with a smile on his face. He took the bets from Canelo, didn't even shake him. Canelo was the one who got his head snapped back more in that fight than anybody. And they weren't even some great power punches all the time. Some was just great stiff jabs by Crawford, just pure, basic boxing. Canelo tried to push forward in round 10 and bully him a little more because of him, being in the bigger weight classes, knowing how to do that with these guys. But again, 11-12, Crawford comes right back. Great combos. Fighting in the pocket, landing from outside early, clearly won this fight all the way. And to credit both these guys, they put on a great fight, but Crawford had the better performance, won as he clearly should have, and becomes the first ever male fighter. We have to put that caveat there, male fighter, to be an undisputed champion in 3 different weight divisions, because, of course, some people put out there that he was the first fighter, and Clarissa Shields was quick to point out that she was the first, and give all the credit to her because she deserves it. I don't care what you think men's versus women's boxing. If you're a unified champ in 3 divisions, and she did it first, you got to give her that credit, but he is the first male to do it, and that was a great job by him. The scoring of the judges didn't come out that way. They gave it, I think it was 115, 113 on 2 of them, 116, 112 on another. Maybe you can give it 116, 112 if you give Canelo that first round. I say 117, 111. John Anik, who was doing the fight, pointed out during it that these were the same judges who scored the Manny Pacquiao versus Mario Barrios fight. And it made sense because they did a terrible job in that one. That shouldn't have been a draw. People that thought Manny Pacquiao won it were crazy. These judges tried to give it to him then, and they tried to give Canelo some love here, but they just couldn't. Crawford just did too good a job in order to get this unified championship at this division to be the 3rd time unified champ. Now, some other things coming out of this fight now. And he was open about it before the fight. Okay with it. I'm sure if he sticks around, he's going to get his payday. Crawford talked about how this was about legacy, how this was, the opportunity to cement himself as one of the best of this century, maybe even one of the best that we've seen in a long time, put himself up there with the greats. So that was more important to him than just winning those titles or getting the payday, because if you look at the payouts, he got about 10 million guaranteed. Canelo got almost 100, which I'm sure is well over 100 when you factor in things like, what they might get for bonuses for ticket sales or viewership, or, maybe he had what Mayweather used to have, where he got a piece of all the hotel rentals too, because, he is a big draw. He was the A side, but he made it 10 times more than the guy who won. I mean, when you're guaranteed maybe that much money, maybe that was part of it. I know Canelo respects him. I know Canelo loves boxing, so I'm not denying that he probably put the work in, but I mean, if you're making 100 million, whether you win or lose, it kind of takes away from it a little bit, I'm sure. But either way, both guys respectful afterwards. Both these guys, no matter what talk, they're respectful before too. But afterwards, they both gave each other so much credit. You had Crawford giving the belts back to Canelo at the presser, because of course you don't keep the belts that you win in the ring. If the other guy has them, he gets them back. You get your own made. You get them. So making sure to do that classy gesture, give it to him in front of his kids, and let him know that he's still a champion. And also when he got to the presser, people asked Canelo, because he fought Floyd Mayweather. Now he fought Bud Crawford. Who was better? He didn't hesitate. Right away, he said Crawford. I know Floyd has more wins. People are going to say a lot more that Floyd cherry-picked his opponents at times than Crawford probably did. And I think that showed with the guys that we mentioned before that he fought, and the guys that he finished with here, possibly in Canelo. Now, we don't know if he's going to be back again. He said he has to go and talk to his family and decide what he wants to do. We know they want him back for sure. Al Sheikh said on social media he wants to see him fight David Benavidez if Benavidez can get down to 168 and another major fight. Benavidez was trying to fight Canelo but couldn't, so he moved up to light heavyweight where he'll fight Anthony Yarde in Saudi Arabia at the end of November. So we'd have to wait till next year if that happened. But also, I've seen since Crawford come out and say he doesn't want to fight him. Not that he's afraid of the challenge. He's like, that's a big dude. That guy's over 6 foot tall. That's, like 4 to 5 inches of height over him. Said, I fought his brother and he was big. This guy's even bigger. I don't know if that's a right fight to have. We'll see what happens. If Crawford comes back, but I'm sure the fans want him back. Him and Canelo, over 41 million views for the fight. $47 million on the gate. That's third all time on the gate for this fight. The other two, of course, were Mayweather fights. One of those with Conor McGregor, where you're packing them in a smaller place, but the tickets were a lot more expensive. And then as far as the viewership goes, I think that falls in line with like the third or fourth most on Netflix. I'm not sure whether all-time boxing. We have to look that up, but I know, unfortunately, Jake Paul had a much bigger number when he fought Tyson, even though that wasn't even a quarter of the fight that this one was. But still, viewership was great for this. Boxing isn't dead if you give great fights, and let's hope they keep doing that. And now when we look at things, like I said, everybody was talking about it all week, about where do these guys rank? Where are they in this century, in the rankings? I say the top 5 of this century to me: Floyd, Pacquiao, Canelo, Crawford, and Usyk. Not necessarily in any order. You want to put the order, that's an interpretation to you. I mean, if you want to go off of just pure record, Floyd and Crawford are undefeated. They probably got to be up there in the 1-2 slot, depending on how you put them. Pacquiao's probably fallen down to 5th, even though, years ago he probably would have been up there in that top 3 because of just hanging on too long. Some of the fights he took didn't work out in his favor, especially that Floyd fight. I might put Usyk. I'd probably put Canelo, then Usyk. I'd probably go Crawford, Floyd, Canelo, Usyk, Pacquiao in the top 5. We're going to talk about the last 25 years. That's just me. That's just my thought right now. You can make an argument. It could be changed and mismatched a bunch of different ways, and I don't think I'd have a huge argument saying you're wrong. Those are the top 5 to me in this last 25 years. That's undisputable. Where they fall, that could be up for debate. But again, this was a huge success for Zuffa Boxing and TKO Group and the Saudis and, their joint venture that they're doing here with this boxing. We'll see if that lasts. But, Saudi Arabia is everywhere in sports. We already knew about Live Golf. They're getting big into soccer. They have Ronaldo over there and trying to build that up as well. They have this in fighting, of course. I'm sure they'll get involved with the UFC and other things as well. They've had fights there. They got this huge comedy festival with just giant name stars in Saudi Arabia starting next week. You got March 26th. They just announced the Fanatics Flag Football Classic with guys like Tom Brady, Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey, CeeDee Lamb, Max Crosby, Gronk, Sauce Gardner, and Myles Garrett are going to be playing. So they are throwing their money everywhere to get involved with sports. So far, it's working out pretty well. Live hasn't completely taken off, but it's disrupted things. Their soccer league's not on the par even with the MLS, but you got the biggest name star right out there in Ronaldo, and they're bringing some others as well. Getting into the boxing floor, we've had plenty of great fights over there. Not just this fight, of course. They've had other fights, other promoters over there in Saudi Arabia. And now they're even getting into comedy, football. The money's going everywhere. So it's a wave, and I don't think it's even started to crest. But let's switch right now, talk about something else, because that was a great fight, but that wasn't the only thing that happened last weekend. So let's switch things up here on Fighting Lines. Now, while Dana was out in Vegas for this huge fight, trying to make the big things happen for Zuffa Boxing, his first child, his first love, the UFC, was still in action as well. And we talked about how they moved things around for UNLV to make this fight happen, so they had Allegiant Stadium. Well, they also moved things for the UFC to make it happen as well, because obviously if you're part of both these properties, the last thing you want them doing is competing. And so you had this one happen in the afternoon in San Antonio, the afternoon and early evening. And, it was kind of like the forgotten younger child. Had to move, had to be elsewhere. I'm sure they would have loved to have this in Vegas, but you certainly didn't want the crowds, shifting over there. Vegas is where they had the first UFC Noche last year, which that's one thing to me. I mean, do we have to continue with that every year? I get it's the same weekend around Mexican Independence Weekend. Again, as we talked about with the boxing. For me, the Sphere show, that Noche card they had the first time, was special. And that's why you gave it that special name. You had all the theme around it. You had, the incredible show that you had all over the sphere as these fights were going on, everything that you put into it to make it special. I understand giving it that different name, but now that we're just going to continue this every year, no matter what the fights are, no matter where they are, no matter what's going on with them, it kind of diminishes the brand. It's like the whole BMF title thing. Do we really need it? It's a UFC fight night. It's cool with the Noche. The costumes are cool for the ring girls. Mexican fighters had a great night on the fight card, up and down. You're in San Antonio, which is close to the border, so it's a cool theme, but do we really have to drag this out every year? Are we going to be having UFC Noche in like Milwaukee next year or something? Or we always have to be in Vegas, Texas, Phoenix area to make sure we're by Mexico to make it happen? I don't know. I focus on the fights, not all the pomp and circumstance. I kind of wish we left the Noche with that one we had last year, because then it make it more special. I think you dilute it the more you do it. Either way, there's some good fights up and down that card. My biggest bone, forgetting the Noche, is ESPN's app is finally really good. Right before the UFC leaves it. Like, really, all these years you guys have had this partnership, we couldn't fix this before, where you can go back now and watch, just each fight. You don't have to watch the whole card and just keep fast forwarding through. Now you can go fight by fight. Now you can do different things in there and follow it on your phone. All this stuff is really cool right before they lose the UFC next year. So way to go, ESPN. Day late and dollar short right now on that one. I'll still enjoy the app. I'll use it with other things, but I think that could have been great for the UFC all these years that you had it, and you couldn't get it until just before you lose them. Very weird right there. But as we said, Mexican fighters on the card, 4-0. 5-0 if you include Kelvin Gastelum, who was, of course, Mexican descent, but we saw some great fights and great action from it. At featherweight, you had Diego Lopez versus Gene Silva, number 2, number 10 in that division. Lots of bad blood between these guys. Lots of smack talking coming in. And it was a great fight. It delivered. I mean, early on, you had Lopez feeling out, throwing some good district strikes. You had him trying to get the hooks on Silva, got the mount when Silva went for a spinning back kick, threw some nasty elbows and punches to open him up. Eventually, Silva got back to the feet, and there was some action back and forth in the last minute, but I had it 10-9 Lopez. Round 2, kind of slow start. Both guys throwing some big shots about 90 seconds in, but after all the gas they put out in that first round, they started a little slower, maybe looking for some bigger spots and not leaving themselves open. But one thing you saw was Silva kept throwing some crazy strikes as he does. And multiple times, I think it won the first round and 2 in the second round, you saw him doing a spinning back elbow. Kept trying to land it. Great action midway through the round as both guys start to land some big shots. Just stand there right in front of each other, middle of the ring, middle of the cage, pounding each other, big shots left and right, moving a little bit here and there, but both guys giving, taking, not caring. If the other guy was hitting them hard, they were going to try to hit him harder, and it was awesome. And then all of a sudden, it ends like that, because you had Silva trying the back elbows, spinning back elbows. Lopez says, whatever you can do, I can do better. And just before the end of the round, 30 seconds left, drops him and cuts him badly with a spinning back elbow, and then gets on top and starts to hammer fist him, and the 12 stops it at 4:48 of the round. It was a hell of a strike, highlight reel ending, and it just fit perfectly that this guy had his opponent try to use him on him multiple times, and then he finishes him with that same strike. And right after the fight was over, he went over to Silva's corner, started talking to the cage with him afterwards. So the bad blood continued to the point that Silva's on the ground, bleeding from his head. They put the stool out for him to try to sit down on it, but he's still sitting on the mat. And as Lopez is talking to his corner, he takes his stool and just shoves it at him. And then he gets up and starts getting in his face, and the people getting between them, and he throws a punch at Lopez as he's walking away. Before we get to the reading of the result and interviews, it looks like Silva and Lopez kind of resolved things there. And Lopez talked about in his post-fight interview where he said that, his corner was talking smack and they were saying some really messed up things, and he had to let them know. So that he went over there and did his thing. But it looks like the bad blood between those guys, at least, might be squashed after this fight. But that was a great fight, probably one of the best of the year. Got fight of the night honors. And now you have to say, does Lopez get his shot at Volk? I think he should. He says he's okay taking another fight before the title bout when he got interviewed after the fight. But, I mean, if you look at the rankings, he is number 2. Okay? Number 1 over him. Movsar Evliab. Number 1. Unbeaten, but he hasn't fought this year. He only fought 2 times in 2024 and 1 time in 2023 and 2022. If you're not active, you don't get the title shot. You got to keep going. You can't just wait around for that shot. I know plenty of guys at the upper echelon have. mean, would Michael Chandler wait like 2 years to try to get his hands on Conor McGregor before he finally took another fight? And that wasn't his fault. I'm not blaming him. That's on Conor. But still, sometimes, the guys sit and wait. Aspinall was waiting for Jones forever. But that's different than this guy who wasn't the champion, who didn't have necessarily the clearest path to there, and hasn't barely fought. I don't know if it's injury. I don't know what's going on. I wouldn't put him in there until he fights again. Then, number 3, Yair Rodriguez won 2 fights since losing to Volk in 2023, but only 1 fight each of the last 2 years. Not fighting since April. Not the biggest layoff, but still not the biggest streak going either when you have this guy sitting right in front of him in Lopez. After that, LaRon Murphy, number 4 in that division, had a great win against Pico last month. 17-0-1. But can you really jump Lopez after he just put on that spinning back elbow? I don't think so. If Lopez had a boring fight against Silva to get the win, I think Murphy's the guy who got the title shot. Now that Silva did this, sorry, Murph. You got to wait. I think he has to go one more fight, or at least wait for Lopez to get his shot at Volk before he gets the next one. If he wants to wait, if he wants to sit out 6 months, he can do that. But I think right now Lopez has to get that title shot at featherweight. Then you had a bantamweight fight between number 9 Rob Font and David Martinez. Of course, Font was coming in off back-to-back wins. One of those was a split decision, so it was tight. But he's facing a youngster in Martinez who had an 8-fight win streak and was 1-0 in the UFC coming in. Only had 1 fight, and all the way up on the co-main event here because Font's opponent drops off. Martinez gets a chance to move up, and he takes it. Not afraid of the big lights, not afraid of the main spot on the show. He says, let's do it, and he certainly did not shy away from it in his performance. Early on, Font was stalking. Martinez was just throwing mostly kicks, keeping him to the outside, landing a good right, halfway through the round. Font had a big right in the last minute and then backed up Martinez. But Martinez, I think, got the round 10-9. It could go to Font, and that would be key in this scoring, as it was a unanimous decision of 29-28. It could have went either way. If he gave Font that first round, then it's his fight, because in the second round, he comes forward. Martinez was striking from the outside. Martinez was bleeding from his right eye. He landed a good right, but Font was stalking at the end, landing good shots. I thought he got that second round. Even though Martinez had some shots from the outside, I thought Font was more powerful, more dangerous. Right there, split fight right now, 19-19, as you go into the third, where Martinez just changed it up, started coming forward more than Font. Instead of letting Font push the action, instead of being bullied around by the vet, he starts stalking a lot more, using hard leg kicks to keep Font from getting inside. He puts it on him in that last round, especially calling Font to meet him in the middle of the ring towards the end of the round. Fans were loving it. He was saying, let's go, come on, let's go. And Font obliged, but Martinez got the better on him, knocked him down, pounded him on the mount, even went well past the bell because the ref didn't hear the bell. So he just continues to throw shots on him, but he gets the win there. Unanimous decision for the youngster. A great job by him, now 2-0 in the UFC. Looking forward to seeing what is next for him in this division. Probably getting himself into those rankings when he beat a guy who's number 9. I mean, that is a stacked division, but still, some great performances by him early on. Might find himself in that top 15, maybe not all the way into the top 10 yet, but he will have a number next to his name before his next fight, I'm sure. Then he had a lightweight battle between Rafa Garcia and Jared Gordon. Now, Garcia was coming in off a win over Dawson last year and was won 3 of his last 4. Gordon was coming in off a win over Moises in May and was a good favorite at minus 250, but when he gets into the cage, all of a sudden you see he's got that knee sleeve on, which pretty much is frowned upon unless you really need it. So what was going on with him before this fight that we didn't know about? There must have been something with that knee that he actually had the sleeve on, because it gives your opponent something else to grab onto. It's something that won't get as slippery as your body and your natural skin as you sweat. So not something the fighter wants to wear, but I guess he needed it, and it showed, as you had Garcia throwing hard on everything in the first round. Shook Gordon on a few shots early on. 10-9 for Garcia to me. Round 2. Gordon goes in for the early takedown, and Garcia grabs a guillotine. Gordon, being the veteran he is, he rolls into it to give him the mount. Instead of letting him get self-choked out, he said, all right, I'll give up another bad position, let you get mount, but I have a better chance of getting out of that, which he eventually does. And then turns into a fight in a phone booth in the middle of the ring. Gordon starts getting the better of it for a little bit there in that second round before Garcia breathing heavy. Garcia opened Gordon up with a late elbow to the forehead, but, even though Garcia had the early submission attempt, I thought when you got into the nitty-gritty there in the middle of that round, guys just swinging on each other like we talked about in the last fight, I thought Gordon kind of took the lead there, and I think he got that round 10-9, even fight at that point. Round 3, both guys are landing. Garcia lands a straight right with 2 minutes into the round. Tries to get the rear naked choke, but switches to big shots and elbows from the side, and pounds Gordon into submission before the ref stops it. It was, a good fight. Gordon was coming back in that second round, looked like he might have had some life. Garcia had a good start to it, but then Gordon gets caught right in that third round, as you said, dropped. Garcia goes for the choke, realizes it's going to be too hard, and says, you know what? I'm just going to beat you up. Does that, gets the fight, gets the win. Garcia's now won 6 of his last 8 fights, so I wouldn't be surprised if we find a number next to his name coming up soon as well as we continue to do these rankings before the next time he gets in the cage for the UFC. Then at middleweight, you had Kelvin Gastelum versus Dustin Stoltzfus. There was a lot of controversy before this fight because Gastelum took it on 4 weeks' notice. So a guy who's had trouble making weight before, coming in with just a month training, might be a little bit of an issue, and it was. He missed weight, as he has a bunch of times before in his career. But he didn't just miss it. He missed it big. 5 pounds off. It wasn't even close. And had to give up 35% of his purse. Now, of course, that financial hit is always big. But, what's the advantage? For another guy who had to cut all the weight and now fighting a guy who maybe gave up a couple of days ago and said, it's not worth me being drained, not being at my top, chance. Maybe that 35% is worth it to get the win because that's what happened. Kelvin Gastelum got the W. He had a good performance, but how much of that was helped by the fact that he didn't have to cut that weight? We don't know. But still, has happened before with him. And a lot of people are up in arms about it. You even had Cormier talking about if it was okay for him to interview him after the fight because, this is a controversy and, do you really want to give him that credit when the guy didn't do one part of his job before the fight started, which was to cut that weight? Yes, you had a short, notice. You only had 4 weeks. A lot of guys like longer, 6, 8 weeks, but you knew what it was. You knew how much time you had, but it was more important for you to fight on this card than to meet that contractual obligation. A lot of people aren't happy about that for sure. Kelvin Gastelum has had a great career. One of his fight against Adesanya is in the Hall of Fame for one of the best fights, that people have ever seen in the UFC. But still, there's always going to be that what if thing with the weight because this isn't the first time it's happened. But either way, round 1, Gastelum was stalking right away. He felt good, obviously, with that extra weight. Stoltzfus stumbled him with a body kick later in the round, eventually got a takedown. And I thought he even kind of stole that round, 10-9, even though Gastelum was coming forward early on. Second round, Gastelum was landing a couple of lefts early on in the round that really hurt Stoltzfus. Caught him again midway through the round, never truly attacked him and tried to finish him right there, but still, those lefts were a big factor for him against Stoltzfus. Shook him a bunch of times, tried to grab a guillotine, but lost position. Stoltzfus tried to grab the guillotine himself late in the round. Doesn't get it. Lands some big shots to end the round. It was good ending to it. Sometimes with the judges, what you do at the end is enough. I don't think it was, and obviously the judges didn't either in that case because 10-9 Gastelum to that round as we go to the third where he's just stalking, landing with power, just dominating his opponent in that way. Stoltzfus went for the takedown, got stuffed. Gastelum continued to land shots throughout the round. That one was all Kelvin. 2 was mostly Kelvin. 1 was Stoltzfus. Gastelum picks up 2 and 3. He gets the unanimous decision, 29-28. Then at Bantamweight, to start the card off, you had a great battle between Santiago Luna and Kwang Lee. Luna's UFC debut. He's the second youngest UFC man on the roster. Lee was coming in at 1 and 2, but won his last fight by a rear naked choke. So this is going to be big for these guys. Either Lee needed this fight to get back to 500, or you needed Luna coming in there in his debut as a Mexican fighter on the Noche card. He wanted to make an impression. He did. Round 1, Lee caught Luna early with a right out of the gates. The right hook about 15 seconds in, head kick about 10 seconds later, then a short right after that. So Lee's starting good. He's feeling good, looking good. Then all of a sudden, halfway through the round, Luna throws a left hook that drops him, puts him lights out on the ground, 248 with the ref stops it. Luna had a little gymnastics in the cage for some emphasis after the fight, but a great debut for the young fighter to come in there and face some trouble in the early going. Ate some good shots, showed he had a chin, showed he wasn't going to get put out with just that early work, and then does the same thing himself in getting the finish against his opponent, against Lee. So those were some great fights for the Noche UFC card. I wish we just made it a UFC fight night. Or you could have made it UFC fight night, Noche, whatever. But some great fights throughout. Some great performances by the Mexican fighters, especially your boy Lopez, who puts out Silva with that spinning back elbow. A lot of great things to talk about from that fight. A lot of great things to see from these fighters continuing with the UFC. Right now, we're going to switch up gears and go take the gloves off and talk about the BKFC, as they had a fight card as well, BKFC 80 in Hollywood, Florida. Now, starting off the whole weekend with all the fight action was BKFC 80 in Hollywood, Florida. It was a heavyweight battle. Headline in that one, it was the rematch that we didn't need. 2 great fighters in the heavyweight division. Honorable Adams, the former champion. Leonardo Perdomo, the guy rising up through the rankings, top contender right now for a lot of people in the heavyweight division, just steamrolling guys. But he steamrolled Adams in their first fight. Adams wasn't happy about it. He thought he got quick counted because Perdomo was showboating after he got the knockdown the second time, and that caused the ref to be, push Perdomo into the neutral corner to take time out of the count to get him out of the way. So he really didn't get to Adams before he starts with 8, 9, 10. So Adams wasn't even close to getting up. Thought he got quick counted. It wasn't a quick count, though. The problem was that the ref had to get Perdomo out of the way, wasn't counting out loud to let Adams know that he was still, on the clock here. And that's how it ends up. But Perdomo beat him. He beat him good in that fight. It wasn't close. It wasn't like Adams had his, good shots early on that put Perdomo down. And then Perdomo comes back with that one knockout and gets it. Perdomo ran through him like he has done with everybody else. Never in doubt. But still, he's a former champ. Got the respect of getting the rematch. So what happens? The same thing. Round 1, Perdomo knockout within 1 minute. He dropped him with the jab in the first 15 seconds. You saw Adams get up with a grimace on his face, kind of like, oh man, again, like, I can't beat this guy. This guy can hit me with a jab, and I can't, stay on my feet. So you knew it was not going to be long for this world once that first one happened 15 seconds in. And Perdomo looks almost like he was going for a takedown. 20 seconds later, he's getting so low to come in on Adams, try to avoid his shots. But still, gets him against the ropes. There's an exchange by the ropes with just less than 1 minute in. Perdomo hits him with a short left hook, drops at him again. This time, it's over. He's not getting back up. Starts smacking the mat immediately with his frustration and annoyance. Obviously, there's some kind of injury, I'm sure, that Perdomo put on him with that big shot. But Adams does not get up to the count of 10. Gets the full count this time. Perdomo does not mess around this time. He knows what happened last time. I'm sure somebody got in his ear and said, hey, listen, you put him down. Just shut up and stand still so we can get him out of there. And that's what happened. He get right to the neutral corner. The ref gives the full 10 count to Adams, and he has no chance of getting up because El Zombo went through him like he did the first time once again. So now he gets the win. He is 9-0, all by first round KO. Number 1 in the heavyweight rankings for the BKFC. He clearly has to be the main guy to get this shot at Ben Rothwell. Rothwell was supposed to fight in Australia. That card got canceled because they got denied the license from the commission. He hasn't fought since he beat Mick Terrell for the title in Philly in January. He's been on the bench. I think we got to get him a title defense, and I don't think there's anybody else in the heavyweight division that has even a chance to raise their hand that isn't Leonardo Perdomo. If you put Big Ben and Perdomo together, don't leave your seat once that starts because it's not lasting long. It's going to be an awesome fight. We need to put it together. Now, Dave Feldman said Perdomo is in line for the title shot, but he also said that, well, we have this tournament coming up for the baddest man alive, next year. Maybe he wants to wait for that. Please don't. Please don't do that to us, okay? He barely took anything. Rothwell's been sitting on the shelf since January. As long as neither of them are injured, let's do this in November, December. Let's end the year on a bang with these two heavyweights facing off for the title. Please, let's make that happen. Because I think Perdomo's in for that. If you hear him after the fight, there's only one thing on his mind, and it wasn't that tournament.
Brian Rothwell, what are you doing, big boy? Don't be scared. Don't be scared, Ben Rothwell. Don't be scared, big boy.
Now, he also had a nice fight at featherweight between Edgardo Plazola and Gary Fox. Now, Fox, of course, is the UK featherweight champ, 4-2 record before coming into this one, after beating Chip Chase in March. There's been lots of talk back and forth between him and Kai Stewart. I know they had that big presser a couple months ago, and Kai was saying he wanted to do other things. He was talking about going up to lightweight, but they got that lightweight tournament. He said he knows they want him to fight Fox. He didn't think he was worthy, but there was a lot of smack talk going back and forth between these guys. So where are we going to get a matchup between them? If he gets past this guy, all his fights were over in the UK. He hadn't fought the best of the BKFC over here in the US. So they said, hey, listen, you fight this guy, you beat him, you get your chance at King Kai. Well, he will not be getting that chance at King Kai. Plazola was 5-0 coming in with all KO or TKO wins. Also, all those in Hollywood. So he's getting his 6th fight in a row in Hollywood. Fight at home. It worked out well for him when he fought Louis Lopez in March and beat him up. And now he does it again. He's the big favorite. He rolls through Fox by unanimous decision, 50-44 on 2 cards, 50-43 on one of them. That means one of those was a 10-8 for 2 of the judges, and 2 rounds were 10-8 for one of the judges. And what, surprisingly, I agree with the one who had it 10-8 for 2 rounds. There was only one knockdown, but he kicked his butt up and down this fight. Both guys were aggressive at the start with big shots. Things start to calm down, get a little slower in the second half of the round. Plazola comes with some good shots in the clinch. It's a little more aggressive in the second half of the round. I give him the 10-9 there. Round 2, he's stalking, throwing big shots when he can, yelling, yeah, with every power shot, like, cowboy rustling cattle. I've never heard that. I've heard different yells, heard the or the different things that people yell as they are throwing punches. Never heard "yah," but he made it work, and it did the damage. He gets another 10-9 round in round 2. Round 3, Fox starts coming forward because he realizes he's down. He's got to take some more chances. But Pozzola's throwing hard again, and with just 1 minute left in the round, he catches Fox with a big right to the head, up with an uppercut to the body in the clinch. And it looked like he almost held Fox up, with his clinch arm around him. He probably would have went down already, but the second shot puts him down to the ground. After another right, Fox goes down 10-8. Pozzola, obviously, from that one with the unified rules there. So now he's up 30-26. It's pretty much feast or famine now for Fox. He has no chance of coming back unless he gets a couple 10-8 rounds or himself a knockout. He's trying to push forward, trying to do that in round 4. He knows that. He knows the situation that he's in. Kept getting countered, though, so I thought Pozzola won 10-9 again. Round 5, Fox is trying to come forward again. Now he's in desperation mode. He's got to get the knockout, but Pozzola keeps landing strong counters. Every time he tried to get in close to land something, his opponent brushed him back with a big shot. 1 minute in, he catches him again and starts opening him up and making him bleed as he just pummels him for the rest of the round. It's amazing. You got to give Fox credit that he stood on his feet for the last minute of that 5th round. But he was getting so dominated in that round, even though he never went down, I still give that one 10-8 for the opponent. 50-43, Pozzola wins the fight on my card. He got that on one judge scorecard. He got 50-44 on 2 other judges. Either way, he proves how much of a badass he is in this division. And I think he should be next in line for the featherweight title shot. If you're the next guy in the rankings besides the champ, how you're not the next guy to go fight him if you haven't fought him before, or if you don't have another reason. But let's look at the rest of the guys just to make sure. Number 2, Gaffey, he's only had a few fights overseas. So hasn't fought over here against the toughest in the BKFC in the US in the main cards. And we saw what that did to Fox. Number 3, Duran. He lost to Stewart for the title a couple fights ago. So he's worked his way back up. He's got a couple wins, but still needs to do more in order to get that title shot to me. And number 4, Nathan Rivera. He's unbeaten, but he's only 4-0. So he's made a big name for himself. He's the guy who's come out with some flashy predictions, left envelopes under Dave Feldman's seat, telling him what he's going to do to the guy, and goes ahead and does it. But still, 6-0, 4-0. Obviously, number 1 guy, 6-0, and Pozzola deserves the title shot. Feldman said in the post-fight that he thinks Kai has a fight before he defends it against Pozzola, but Pozzola's next fight is definitely for the title. So, as long as he's not silly and decides that he doesn't want to sit around and be inactive, or, that he needs the money and he can't wait, he's going to get his title shot. It just might take him a little while. Like King Kai Stewart might have another fight before that, some kind of super fight maybe, whether it's up at 155 against someone or 135. He's talked about wanting to rule a bunch of different divisions. So we'll see if they give him that chance before he defends that title again. Then also at heavyweight, although it was a weird, heavyweight, because both these guys weighed in at 212. So it wasn't as a heavyweight fight so much. It was guys who couldn't make cruiserweight fight. Both were making their BKFC debut, and that was Yoel Romero, the Soldier of God, versus Theo Dukas. Of course, Romero, 48-year-old fighter who has been around throughout MMA for a long time, from Strikeforce, UFC, Bellator, PFL. He's fought in every different organization in MMA. Dukas, on the other hand, is only a 500 MMA fighter. Got lots of finished wins, but never in the BKFC. Romero, huge favorite, minus 2,000 coming in here. And he showed us why. People expected big things for him. A lot of guys didn't want to fight him, according to the higher-ups at the BKFC. And a lot of people ducked this fight. So credit, of course, to Dukas for taking it, but he didn't give him much fight. Round 1, it was a feeling out. Romero was trying to Superman punch a few times before he's won. You can't do that. That's not part of the unified rules of the BKFC, so he pulled off of that, stopped doing it, but it's feeling out, not throwing too much. A few stiff shots, neither guys, throwing the haymakers that we expect from them. 10-9, Romero for being a little more active. Round 2, Romero clinched with Dukas with a counter, left shot about 14 seconds in, drops him 10 seconds later with another left. Dukas gets up, still trying to come forward. Give the guy credit. You just hate the power shots of Yoel Romero, still wanted some more. Dropped him again with a left uppercut, 30 seconds left in the round. Dukas slipped in his own blow when he got back up, so he got dropped twice. Still got back up. The guy's got heart, then fell on the blood that came from his face from the other knockdowns, gets back up again, but once they get the action going once again, Romero jumps right on him, catches him with another left uppercut. The left was deadly for the Soldier of God. Dukas gets knocked down for a 3rd time and goes to the mat for the 4th time, obviously with the slip as well, and says, you know what, I'm done. That's it. And he is called out TKO at 156 of round 2. A great performance by Romero. Showed the power that we've known for a long time. The guy is jacked, and he could throw some bombs. We'll see what he does. After the fight, he was talked about the weight, as we said, it was only 212 fighting the heavyweight division. He said, no. I'm a cruiserweight. My opponent couldn't make 205. That's why we fought at 212, but I'm going to cruiserweight. He wants to fight there. We'll see what's next for him. Some of the big names that could be there and fighting him. A lot of great fights can be put together for this guy. I don't know what's going on with the juggernaut. Maybe he comes back against Romero. Maybe some of these other guys in the top 5 take a shot to try to dethrone him before he gets a shot at the title. Kamozi's name was brought up. Obviously, he's defending the championship belt in Italy against Alessio Sakara. So if he keeps that, maybe he fights him, but I think that's too early. I hate when they do that. And just because the guy's a big name doesn't mean let's throw him right in there. They did that with Arlovsky. They're bringing up Rothwell as well, and they have the pass, but they got to get at least 2-3 fights before you start throwing them a title shot. I don't care who they are before this. That being said, we'll see him again at cruiserweight. Can't wait to see what is next. Last 2 fights we'll talk about in this card. You had a light heavyweight battle between Jeremy Smith and David Simpson. 2 guys who throw some big shots. Don't always get the win. They're not the best records, but they are some of the most exciting fighters in this division in the BKFC. And this one ended quickly. Simpson gets the first round finish. He caught short left into jaw Jeremy Smith with 15 seconds, but Smith kept coming forward. Just over a minute left. Simpson lands a big uppercut to the body and then pushes Smith against the ropes and just starts unloading with hooks and uppercuts as Smith covers up. The ref jumps right in. He didn't let him fall down. Didn't give him, a knockdown and a standing 8 count. He said he was getting pummeled. I'm going to stop this now. I thought it could have been a little quick, but Jeremy Smith didn't seem to be protesting. Some, the broadcasters, Chris Lytle and Sean Wheelock, thought maybe he was out on his feet. And that's why the ref stepped in. Just got woken up by more punches. It's possible because Simpson was thrown with some nasty intent. Smith loses. Simpson wins. Simpson's now coming off back-to-back first round finishes to go to 5-3. We'll see where he lands in that light heavyweight division. I think he still needs a fight or 2 before he gets back into ranking territory. And then at lightweight, you had Bobby B3 Henry versus Stash the Flash Kuykendall. Henry, of course, is the younger brother of Bryce Henry. Kuykendall was making his debut in the BKFC. Henry gets the second round KO 34 seconds in. Henry was attacking right away, landing some big shots on his opponent against the ropes 30 seconds in, knocks him down, but then keeps throwing. So the knockdown counts. It goes to 10-8, but then it becomes a 9-8 round because the ref takes a point from Henry right away for continuing to attack his opponent when he was down on a knee. 9-8 Henry for the round afterwards. Kuykendall wants to continue. Takes a little bit of time. Doesn't take a lot. Says, let's go. It's okay. I'm still going to fight. So they get to round 2. Henry has stiff jabs at Kuykendall. Chases him. Lands some good shots. He goes down, but it's ruled a slip because of a push by Kuykendall as they're mixing it up there. And then Henry gets up and immediately lands a jab to the nose and a cross to the jaw of his opponent. Kuykendall goes down. Doesn't get back up before the 10 count. Knockout for B3 Henry there. We'll see what is next for him in that lightweight division. The Henrys are, tearing things up. They have a bright future for the BKFC.
I'm talking about drawing a line in the sand, dude.
Before we get out of here, I'm going to do a couple things, a couple stories, some news items that happened over the last month while I was kind of out of commission here and doing my thing. I want to hit on them. And this first one, I'm going to talk in a segment called Line in the Sand. And that's where I'm going to talk about somebody who needs to put that foot down, draw that line in the sand and say, listen, we're not crossing it. It's time for things to change. And for me, that's the fighters of the UFC. We saw this past summer, the UFC do its new big deal with Paramount. That's right. Paramount Plus will hold all of the UFC fights for the next 7 years. Now, there'll be some probably on CBS, but the lion's share of those will be on Paramount Plus. Smart move for the new owners of Paramount. That Skydance came in there. They gave a ton of money to South Park, and they threw money at Dana White and the UFC as well. $7.7 billion for 7 years. $1.1 billion a year. Where's that money going? As we've seen a lot of times with the UFC, it's going to the higher up for sure. And it might go to a few select fighters here and there. It's time to make a line in the sand for a lot of these fighters. There's no better time right now than when you have this guaranteed money coming in to say, listen, we want a bigger piece of the pie. And it's not going to be easy. There's been problems with this before where there's been tried to, unionize that have gotten struck down. There's been, some of these fighters have come back years later with these class action suits that have gotten a bunch of money from the UFC and its ownership. But now's the time to say, listen, you've built this on us, on our backs. And I get that it's not as easy as it is for other leagues where you have, these are the games scheduled, these are the TV deals and all that, where you can figure out easily, this is the revenue split, 50-50 down the middle. Everyone's their own person in fighting. You're your own, independent contractor, essentially. But there needs to be some kind of collective bargaining or some kind of law change to get these fighters what they deserve and their bigger piece of the pie here, because it's just not going to them enough. Now, there might not be as easy to get a true 50-50 split in revenue as you get in the major sports, baseball, football, basketball, hockey. But there has to be some kind of reckoning here for these fighters to step in and say, we're not getting enough of our fair share. This is on our blood. We want some more of this. Whether it's by organizing, I don't know if you're going to have a big strike, but as I heard Ariel Helwani talk about this with Bill Simmons on his podcast, there's about 5 managers that control the top fighters in the UFC. You hear a lot of them, you see a lot of them, at these fights. Maybe they can get together and do something and figure something out where they're going to talk to their clients and hold out some of the bigger names to try to get a bigger piece of the pie for everybody. I don't know if you're going to get a full-on union, but there needs to be some kind of collective bargaining, or make some kind of push behind the scenes where you get some laws changed. We talked about the Muhammad Ali Act that protects boxers that the UFC is trying to go in and mess with now as they're into TKO and Zuffa Boxing. Maybe you need some of that in the MMA world. I know it's been proposed in Congress before. Mark Wayne Mullen, a guy who I've not been a huge fan of as a lawmaker, but he came up with in 2016 expanding this to MMA and said he was going to bring it up again years later. Both times it has failed. Now, of course, getting something through Congress is probably going to be a bit of a problem, considering that Trump is very tight with Dana White. He's not going to want to mess with his money, and they're talking about this White House card next summer. So you're probably not going to get anything right now through Congress this year until maybe there's a change of leadership. But maybe collective bargaining is time. It's been flirted with before. It might be time to step up and say, listen, we're not getting in there unless we get what we deserve. It's happened with sponsorship deals where they didn't get a big piece of the pie for, apparel. They couldn't bring their own sponsors anymore and had to wear certain gear and weren't getting the lion's share of it. It's happened with other sponsorships in the cage and the ring and the broadcast, pay-per-views. Some people got, pay-per-view points, and this is going to change that. That deal is going to take that away from some of these top fighters. They might not make that extra money because they no longer have the pay-per-views. It's great for the UFC, this deal. It's great for the fans in that you can just get this streaming service. Because I've said for years, if you just charge me $500 a year for every pay-per-view and every fight for the UFC, I'd do that. If you charge me $80 a month, at least, sometimes twice for pay-per-views, I can't afford doing that. You go $800 to $1,000 a year. That's insane. Now you're getting that for a lot cheaper with Paramount Plus. It's going to work out great for Paramount, bringing that audience over. It's going to work out great for the UFC, making that money guaranteed, not having to worry about putting on pay-per-views. Time for it to work out great for the fighters. It's time for them to draw their line in the sand and say, we need a bigger piece of this, whether it's up front in their salaries as they fight or on the back end with something like, retirement plans, health insurance, even after they're gone, still being taken care of after they put their bodies on the line for the UFC like you have with the NFL. One way or another, something's got to give. You get $1.1 billion a year, the fighters need their piece, and they got to fight for it.
You are way out of line here. I'm out of line. Yes, sir.
All right, we're going to wrap up this first episode with a segment I call Out of Line, which is when I see something going on in combat sports, so I just got to point out and say, this is not right. Why are we doing this? This can't be. And for me, this time, it's Jake versus Tank. That's right, Tank Davis fighting Jake Paul in an exhibition match November 14th in Atlanta on Netflix. For both of these guys, what are you doing? Tank Davis just had this great fight with Lamont Roach, which he lost, or should have lost at least. It's called a draw, but we all saw him take that knee in that round, and I don't care whether it's grease in your eye or you got hit and you went down. You take a knee, you stop the fight, you lose a point. That's 10-8 to Roach. He should have won that fight. The ref screwed that up. The judges couldn't do anything about it at that point, and there should have been a rematch. That's what the talks were about. Tank Davis and Lamont Roach were talking about rematching it. Instead of rematching him and giving him the chance he deserves when he got robbed from that fight, instead, he's going to fight Jake Paul. Now, as far as Jake Paul goes, this is a guy who's been fighting for legitimacy in boxing since he started. He wants to be taken seriously. People weren't taking him that early on. People said, you're fighting guys who are smaller than you. You're fighting fighters who are washed up. He has started to gain some of that respect. He always had the power, didn't always have great defense, but now he's started to fight some legit fighters. He's coming off that win over Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. Say what you want about that guy. He is a legit fighter, a legit boxer, upper weight classes that Jake Paul is fighting at. So it became a little bit of a situation where this guy started getting some respect in boxing as a real boxer. was even getting in some of these rankings. But now instead of continuing that and even, maybe getting a title shot or getting a contender fight where you fight somebody with a chance to fight for a title, where you can truly prove you are legit in the boxing world, we're going to put on a fight that's going to have two guys fighting with a 60-pound, 8-inch height, and 9-inch reach difference. What the hell are we doing? You have a legit champion giving a rematch to a guy who should have got a win against him to fight an influencer turn boxer who is twice his size. Why are we doing this? Obviously just for the money. It's all about the money grab. And that is disgusting. If you want to prove you're legit, then fight legit guys like you started doing. If you want to be a real champ and not people say that you're ducking Roach because you really lost to him, then fight him again. This fight should never happen. I can't believe it's being sanctioned in any way. I can't believe someone's even bothering to host it, but they will because it is about money. And that disgusts me. This is out of line. This fight should not happen. These guys should be fighting much different opponents. And I can't believe people are actually going to tune into this. Because I tell you, even though it's on Netflix and I have Netflix, I will not. I watched Paul Tyson. It was ridiculous. It was a sham. But at least it was a guy who was legit. This is not that. And you won't get my eyeballs. Anyway, that's the end of our first episode of Fighting Lines with Brian Ciano. Thank you so much for everybody tuning in. Hopefully we talk to you every week about things going on in the world of combat sports. And you can reach out to us on our social medias. We'll enjoy talking to you, and including the fans, including the fighters, including the broadcasters, all that coming up in future episodes of Fighting Lines with Brian Ciano.